Devil May Cry is kind of a short franchise, having only 5 official games released in the chronology. Even so, its chronological order seems to be decided completely at random when each new game is released. A huge part of the problem being, up until recently, trying to fit the atrocious thing called Devil May Cry 2 in the series canon. This problem has been solved since the release of DMC5, so now we can just put the games in chronological order and discuss where to begin playing if you're new in the series. The main issue that persists is that the franchise have a lot of retcons running and some plot holes throughout the series. I'll address these issues in details while I explain the chronology. So let's get on with it. As usual, I will start by presenting you the chronological order of the games with an improvised flowchart, and then proceed to tell you the best order to play and which ones to avoid in the beginning. There's also an anime, a few novels and manga in the canon, but I will focus only on the games here as usual, since this is the main focus of my channel. Anyway, let's do it! You might notice right off the bat that we have two versions of the chronology, before and after the main retcon. Initially, the first in the entire chronology is Devil May Cry 3, released originally in 2005 for PlayStation 2, but since then remastered for basically every platform. One of the most iconic and beloved action games of all times, and possibly the one most fans love to this day. This game takes place during Dante and Virgil's teenage years and focuses almost entirely on the relationship between the twin brothers. Released as a prequel to both previous games, DMC3 takes its time to explore and expand a lot of Dante's backstory and also set a lot of elements that would become a staple to the franchise after this. Not only on its universe and lore, but also on the gameplay, presenting one of the most fluid combat systems of that generation. A style system that added a lot of variety to the already amazing combo system and also presented us with one of the most iconic rivalries ever seen in video games, Dante and Virgil. It was also the glorious return of the series after Devil May Cry 2 failed in every sense of the word as a sequel to the critically acclaimed Devil May Cry 1. It was the last Devil May Cry game released for the PlayStation 2 and it quickly became a classic with an enormous fanbase even after 20 years. Now, going on with the chronology, the second game is Devil May Cry 1, released originally in 2001 for PlayStation 2, but since then remastered for basically every platform. The one that began it all, originating from a Resident Evil 4 prototype merged with a bug present during the test phase of Onimusha, Devil May Cry 1 was created and directed by Hideki Kamiya, the same genius responsible for Resident Evil 2, Okami, Bayonetta and numerous Twitter accounts blocked. DMC was one of the early titles for PlayStation 2, one that changed the course of action games forever after that point, showing how stylish and fast-paced action games could be without that new technology. I know a lot of people don't agree with me here, but for me, the first Devil May Cry still holds up pretty fine as an action game. Combat is way more limited than recent entries, sure, but it's still pretty satisfying and fun. Also, in my opinion, this one has the best level design in the entire series. No other DMC could ever replicate how fun it was to explore every scenery in this game. The only real downside I can think of this game is the camera, since it uses a fixed camera most of the time, staying true to its Resident Evil origins. This can be a little bit of a pain in the ass, especially during some boss fights, where you will keep losing track of the enemy and getting hit by attacks from out of sight because of the camera. Oh, and the voice acting has some of the best worst moments ever, totally worth it.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
All that aside, you can trust me that, back in 2001, this game was the epitome of cool. The first major plot hole of the series also starts to show here. In this game, it's heavily implied that Dante's mother and brother, Virgil, were killed by Mundus, the villain of this game, when the twins were just kids, meaning that Dante and Virgil probably hadn't seen each other since their childhoods. Devil May Cry 3, however, brushes off this implicit lore and puts them both together in their teenage years, meaning that only their mother was killed by Mundus when they were kids and the twins grew up as orphans. Now, for the third one in the chronology, this is where things start to get even more complicated with plot holes and retcons. Originally, after DMC1 we had Devil May Cry 4, and after it we had Devil May Cry 2. But somewhere in time, Capcom decided to retcon this, and now Devil May Cry 2 takes place after Devil May Cry 1 and before Devil May Cry 4. Many fans, including myself, refuse to accept this new timeline, as not only it doesn't make any sense, but it also adds new major plot holes in the series. For practical reasons, I'll go on with the old timeline here and explain why. Just bear in mind that now officially the next one should be Devil May Cry 2, but I'll go on to Devil May Cry 4, released originally in 2008 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, but remastered for basically every modern platform. The first DMC game released for the HD generation. Also the first one to feature Nero as one of the main characters. Initially frowned upon by some fans, but quickly gaining popularity and establishing himself as one of the most popular characters in the series. Nero's totally new gameplay with his demon arm and chargeable sword and a few tweaks on Dante's gameplay, like the ability to change styles in the middle of his combos, made this game combat system even more diverse and complete than Devil May Cry 3. Level design was immediately criticized since you play half of the game as Nero and then again you play basically the same stages as Dante, even fighting some of the same bosses and everything. Even so, it's still a great game, amazing combat and one of my favorites. I played the heck out of this one, to the point of getting S rank in every chapter in every difficult level. Something I'd never do again since I simply don't have that kind of free time to dedicate to a single game anymore, unfortunately. So, after DMC4, on the original timeline we have Devil May Cry 2. Just remember that in the new updated timeline, DMC4 and 2 changed places. That's the only difference between both timelines. Anyway, let's get on with it. Devil May Cry 2, released originally in 2003 for PlayStation 2, but again, just like the other games, remastered for every modern platform. The black sheep of the series. Originally, it came in 2 discs, the first one containing Dante's storyline and the other one containing Lucia's storyline. This may seem like a nice idea, and it would be if the game didn't suck so much. Most people didn't even bother to play the second disc since not only the game is bad, but the story also wraps up fine playing only Dante's story. Level design here is awful, you just go ahead on linear stages and most of the enemy encounters aren't even mandatory, you can just skip everything and go straight to the boss. Difficulty is also non-existent, you can literally just mash the square button and kill literally everything, including bosses, only shooting with your handguns. The game adds a few acrobatics on Dante's moveset, which is pretty neat, but it's useless on this game. Weapon variety is also gone, you just have some different swords instead of gauntlets, nunchaku and other stuff we can use on other games. And plot-wise, this game is also underwhelming. And on a franchise that plot is completely secondary, this means a lot. Nothing on the story makes any sense here, Dante is a serious dude, darker and edgier than ever, totally out of character from DMC1 and especially considering how unserious he became on the following games. Lucia is as interesting as a brick, and we never see her again on any other game, she's not even mentioned anymore. Arius, the villain, is also anything but remarkable. Probably the only good thing about this game is Dante's outfit, in my opinion the best in the entire franchise. Now, after this atrocity, we finally get to the last game in the series, which is Devil May Cry 5, released originally in 2019 for PC, PS4 and Xbox One. The most recent entry in the franchise, both in release date and in placement in the chronology. Released more than 10 years after DMC4, this game was the glorious return of the franchise, bringing back Nero and Dante as playable characters and adding a new third character to the roster, simply called V. It's because of this game that many fans would rather think that it takes place after DMC2 instead of 4. One of the reasons is the fact that the character looks way older than in DMC4, and the events of DMC2 would explain such a time skip. Not only that, but the events preceding Dante's appearing in this game also match the story of DMC2 way better than the events of DMC4. But anyway, this game is the natural evolution of everything that came before. combat system even more polished, a new arm system for Nero, new weapons for Dante, and a totally new gameplay created for V. The story is also great, with a lot of throwbacks, lore added, and fanservice for those who, like me, have been playing Devil May Cry ever since the first game. Well, that concludes the official chronology, so there's nothing else to talk about, right? Right? Wrong! There are two more games worth mentioning, the first one being Bayonetta, released originally in 2009 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, but remastered for every modern platform and with two sequels, Bayonetta 2 and 3, and a prequel, Cereza and the Lost Demon. What? What do you mean Bayonetta is part of the Devil May Cry's timeline? Well, it is. Kind of part of the same universe, at least. Bayonetta is pretty much like a sister franchise to Devil May Cry, and it was also created by Hideki Kamiya, same dude I mentioned when I talked about the Devil May Cry 1. Both series share a lot of lore and part of the same mythos. A few characters mentioned in the Devil May Cry universe will also be mentioned in Bayonetta, and the creator has somewhat confirmed that both series take place in the same universe. The only reason for it not being explicit is that both series belong to different companies. Bayonetta belongs to Sega, and Devil May Cry still belongs to Capcom. All that aside, you don't really need to play Bayonetta to understand anything about the story of Devil May Cry, but it's also an amazing game, funny as hell, awesome gameplay on the same veins of DMC, and there's absolutely no reason that you should sleep on Bayonetta if you enjoy DMC. Now for the last title I'd like to mention in this video. DMC, Devil May Cry, released originally in 2013 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, also remastered for modern platforms. Controversial and hated by many old-school fans, this game was developed by the British studio Ninja Theory, now popular for developing the Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice series. When this game was first announced, it received so much hate everywhere, mainly for changing the design of Dante and being a reboot that seemed completely different from everything we had so far. The fact that DMC4 had been released a couple of years prior to this and we never had any news about new entries in the series didn't help either. Fans wanted a real Devil May Cry 5, developed by Japanese developers at Capcom, not some weird edgy reboot. I was among the ones that complained when I first saw it, but sometime later, this game was given as a free PlayStation Plus title and I decided to give it a chance, and well, while it plays and looks a lot different from what we know as Devil May Cry, this game is good, seriously, it's a lot of fun, the combat system may be different, but it's also fast-paced and well-balanced, it's clearly inspired by the original DMC series and does a good job. The story is a reimagination, so it's not part of the official canon, but it draws a lot from the original Devil May Cry 1 and 3, presenting a different view on the story of Dante and Virgil, and also a new take on Mundus. I won't try to convince you that this game is worthy of the Devil May Cry name, but instead just try to go into it with an open mind and I'm sure you will enjoy this game. It's great, seriously, and at least it's better than Devil May Cry 2. Okay, so now that we're really through with the entire chronology, let's proceed to which one you should play first, which order should you follow, and where not to start. Where to start? Honestly, it doesn't really matter that much. Although the games are connected, most of them are totally independent stories. The only game that seemed a little more dependent on previous knowledge is DMC5, since it brings back a lot of elements seen in DMC 1, 3 and 4. But to be frank, you can enjoy the game either way. You'll just enjoy it more if you played at least one of these games before. Now, the first and more obvious course of action would be to play in chronological order. DMC 3, 1, 4 or 2, depending on the canon you choose to follow, and finally 5. This way, you have full enjoyment and understanding of the story. But you may be a little impacted by the downgrade on the gameplay going from 3 to 1 and 2. The other recommended course of action would be the released order, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. They were released in this order and naturally can be played like this. This way, you will also be freed from the rough around the edges nature of DMC1 and the atrocious bad game that DMC2 is right off the bat, and from 3 on you can just enjoy the combat getting better and better. Just a reminder, all of the games in the series have a remastered edition or a special edition available. Usually, the special editions feature Virgil as a playable character, rebalanced difficulty, and some extra content. So there's absolutely no reason for you to play the older versions. Just go with the most recent releases of each one and you will be fine. Now, on to the final part of the video. Where not to start. Simple and easy. Do not start with DMC2. It's a bad game, it will hurt your first experience in the series, it doesn't actually add anything important to the lore or develop anything at all. To be honest, I'm not even sure you actually need to play this game unless you really want to play the entire series. DMC5, as I said before, depends a little on previous knowledge of the series lore, but it can be enjoyed nonetheless. Even so, I would recommend leaving it as the last one to play, this way you can understand every reference in the game and have a better enjoyment. DMC4 is also almost entirely independent, but it does feature a few details that are better enjoyed if you played at least DMC3 first. But it's up to you, you'll have fun anyway. And that's it for today's video. It turned out a little more extensive than I thought. I never knew I had so much to say about Devil May Cry, but it makes sense since it's one of my favorite franchises ever, even though I'm more of a JRPG guy. I hope you enjoyed it and that I helped you decide which one should you play first. If you agree or disagree with me, tell me in the comments, and if you decide to follow my recommendation, please come back after playing them and tell me how was your experience. I've been kinda away from this channel due to how much I've been working lately, but I'm trying to write and create content whenever I have some free time. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hype this video, and if you really enjoy my content, consider helping me through my Ko-fi. I'll leave the link on the description. Thanks for watching and see you next time!